This is Kimberly Quinn, host of the Mindcraft podcast, and I can't tell you how much fun I have had doing this podcast. I started when the world closed over the pandemic in an attempt to spread some positivity out there and give people some strategies to enhance their own well being and reduce anxiety and all of that. Now, 2 years later, we're still going strong and now listened to by 52 countries across the world. And I've even helped some of my students get going with their own podcasts. It's super easy to do. And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. I'll just explain for you. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is a ball. Start today. Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another hopefully interesting Minecraft episode. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I'm kind of excited to talk about this new phrase, concept, thing going on in the wake of the great resignation, referred to as quiet quitting. And quiet quitting, this new, term, it's happened sort of post-pandemic. There's a reason for it. I'm going to talk about the reasons for it. But basically, people are coasting, and it's not like they're not doing their job. They are doing their job. They're just doing exactly bare bones, almost in a punch in, punch out kind of way. They might be smiling and nodding. We're going to talk about all that. Basically, quiet quitting refers to that person who now feels like their position at their company or agency or whatever they're doing is like a piece of gum that they have chewed the flavor out of. So here are a couple of points, and I'm taking this so it's okay to plagiarize myself. I recently wrote an article for Psychology Today, just a week ago tomorrow, actually. And so if you want to look up all the references there, you can. There's only a couple actually, because I try not to throw too many stats at people because where it hurts your head. But it is important to have some statistics because it's nice to have the facts to support one's opinions, right? So here's the thing. Last year, about 7 out of 10 employees reported experiencing burnout. Now, obviously, burnout is kind of a big word. I mean, short word in reality, it's 2 syllables, right? But it's a big word because it doesn't just mean a little tired. And it doesn't even mean fatigued. It's kind of soaring past fatigued into I don't care anymore. Even if somebody really loved their job, they loved their job. And so, we're gonna get to. Well, I just want to kind of throw out some points here, and then we're gonna dive in a little deeper. So the next one is when the inflation rate soared to approximately 9% in July of 2022, the average employee raise capped at a mere 3.4%. So that's, it's kind of like thank you because that's better than no raise, but I'm still underneath, by quite a bit. I'm still underneath by quite a bit because that, and it's nice and everything. It's not saying it's not nice. It's better than, it's a half full perspective. In reality, though, when you walk into the grocery store, and you're on a budget, you got a couple of kids, or maybe it's a single parent home, or maybe you're by yourself. There's no second income. Blah 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 blah. It's like thank you, but this is really tough because it's not cutting it with what the price of food costs and everything else is. And then the third one is chronic burnout, poor compensation, increased workload, and diminished appreciation have led employees to reevaluate where their effort is going. And, personally, even outside of the quiet quitting concept phrase, I think this is one of the lessons that the coronavirus really taught us is to reevaluate where our efforts going. Lots of people have talked about, they're talking about being caught in that gerbil wheel, the hamster's gerbil on crack, flying on the wheel, taking family and friends for granted. I mean, we've all had moments of that because we tend to just, sort of know that our family and friends are always going to be there. They're always going to listen. They're always going to forgive us if we, work 95 hours and we come back and apologize kind of thing. And this, I think the coronavirus, as awful as it was, most things aren't all bad or all good, right? Even a funeral is bad and awful and sometimes often tragic as those are. The one positive, I guess, you can come up with anything is that people gathering, human beings gathering together for support and love and kindness, at a time that's so hard. So even with a pandemic, I guess the bless in that mess was that we were kind of forced to reevaluate, where our life minutes were going. Our very valuable, our most precious commodities are our life minutes. And we learned that maybe we need to really think about what we're spending those on. And then lastly, for the key points, here's how Psychology Today does it. You have key points before you get into the beef of it. So quiet quitting is a way that employees reclaim their power and return to a healthier and happier work life balance. Okay, so we've talked about, burnout being tired leads to fatigued, or actually there's exhausted in there first, then fatigued. Fatigued is longer, more long lasting than exhausted. And then burnout, excuse me, burnout is kind of when you just hit the wall, when somebody just loses. It's like they've had the life sucked out of them. So we've talked about that. We started is it's like chewing, it's like a piece of gum you've chewed the flavor out of. When you started the gum, it was good. You liked your job or career or calling; those are all different. And the reason you've lost the juice is because sort of a slow loss of control. A lot of external circumstances. Kind of beating people down, kind of thing. And I know actually I did a talk. This is pre-quiet quitting talk, but just last May I did a talk for the student affairs crew at Penn State, and what a lovely group. I hope I go back there because they just were some of the nicest, kindest, just funny, just good group of people to ever hang around with. They were just really, really good people. They were really openly honest about caring so much about the students at Penn State and wanting to prevent this from happening. And some of them were very candid in saying that they were right on the edge and they were aware of it, yet, short staffed and people, that we were still, actually, I think they had just come back from being remote at that time. So there's a lot of that left over where stuff just doesn't happen the same remotely. We know that it doesn't. Also, the isolation, not seeing our colleagues, for lunch and at the water cooler and going for a walk outside on that beautiful campus. I was right there when all the blooms were happening in May. Just gorgeous. I'm missing that human interaction and the social stuff. And they were really sort of honest about basically saying, help. I don't know how much I really like it here, but I don't know how much more I can take of this. And so we had, we had, so a really good talk about, getting some things in place. And they have a really supportive, they're just a really supportive group there. And so here's the thing, and that's kind of that kind of like is the point right there, is we're talking about good people who love what they do. In this case, they love their students and they want so much to not land in this place of burnout, because of burnout, once you hit the wall, you hit the wall, right? You want to throw in the towel. And then if you kind of throw in the inflation piece, and if you put those together and you've got young families starting out, you've got a single parent, you've got a person by themselves, you've got two partners, one lost their job for whatever reason from the pandemic, whatever, and there's just been a lot of stress in the air, I guess. And it's also, there's a lot of emotions going on, and fear, right? A lot of fear-based thinking, which we know can be cyclic, and then fear-based thinking leads to fear-based feelings, which then leads to fear-based behavior, which is I better box check for a while until I can find something better. So now what we have across the country, I'm sure to some degree worldwide, and certainly let me know those listeners. Last I checked, uh, this wonderful podcast was being listened to by over 54 countries. um, in addition to the United States. So thank you, everyone who's tuning in, and please let me know in the comments section. You can also find this podcast on YouTube. You can put comments there. So anyway, what we have now is a situation where lots of people, lots of good-hearted people who've maybe devoted lots and lots of life minutes, and investing in their, careers and callings. And now they are sort of just going through been, feeling that they're reduced to a situation of going through the motions, showing up maybe exactly on time, leaving the minute the clock ticks done. We're not talking about cutting corners. Now, that's the late stages of quiet quitting because these are integrity based people. Like, okay, this is my job description, da 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 da. And I know, where I work at Champlain. Now I love it there, and I got the same feeling from this Penn State crew that was a whole group of people that's used to going above and beyond. You could just tell by the few hours I spent like half a day with them, I guess. You could just tell, and of course we've got, medical folks and teachers and firefighters and just name you can just name whatever profession you're in, and many people are really in it to win it. It's not only, obviously we most of us need money, but many people are drawn to their job career callings, especially because of the difference they're making in the world. And that's a real tough one when good people making a difference in whatever reason or whatever way, I mean, for whatever reason, whatever way. And that can be anybody. Doesn't have to be the Peace Corps. We can make a difference anywhere, by how we bring our own success to it, right? And so also there's also an underlying sadness sometimes with people because they feel like they've lost their sense of agency and control. I used to love it. I used to have more of a voice, or I still have a voice in the sense that I'm saying my voice, but I'm not being heard. Another thing that's happening is my voice is being heard by my manager, whoever my report to person is. Those are different words for different fields, obviously. And they're burnt out too, and they want to help me, but can't because they're fried too. I was actually talking with a manager recently, not in higher ed actually, and they were talking about really so much needing for somebody to come in to do to manage the front desk, and and didn't want to ask this one person who's been this, just old faithful through the whole thing. And this manager had been taking it on herself to not ask this person. And then it was like, and they're both fried, right? So she didn't want to kind of abuse her manager. And so it was taking on herself because this person had the one day off, and then it's 7 days a week. Then you're on to your neck. Then you're on to your work week. Then it's 12 days in a row. And, so then what do you do? When you have, good-hearted managers are trying to take it off there, and then everybody's lost their voice basically. And that's what's happening because this what's going on is what's in the wake of the quiet quitting is in the wake of the great resignation. So the good people, I'm not saying anybody that, I'm not, just make sure I'm saying a disclaimer. I'm not judging those who, chose to leave during the great resignation, or that wasn't their choice. There's that too, right? But no matter how you cut it up, the people that stayed, there are far fewer people who stayed now. And I know I'm in Vermont, as most of you know. And I was just down in Massachusetts. I was just down in Boston visiting our oldest son for his birthday and his new bride. And there are dining uh, halls, rooms, whatever, restaurants that are roped off. And even in Vermont, we don't have the population they have down there, and it's not different. It's just like a per capita difference, but it's not different. They don't, and it's not. They don't have the staff, so it's been, and that's true in hospitality. That's true in lots of different places. And so what's happening here is the people who are there are just getting fried, and we're all human here. And these people are superheroes, and I'm going to label everybody superheroes. And of course, the medical crew through the whole pandemic, and they've got to be beyond fried. We got the firefighters, all the emergency people, right? Ambulance and all that. Then we've got people at gas stations, which we couldn't do without them either. We need everybody, or we couldn't get where we're going. The ambulances couldn't fuel up without them. we've got the grocery store people, we've got the retail people that got to keep the economy going. Like there isn't anybody who's not important, obviously. And this is what's happening is when we're short staffed on all these fronts, human beings have limits. And even though we've all been, been flying around with S's on our chests, it's kind of like all hitting the wall right now. I mean, it's just what's happening. People are fried and they're done. And remember, we're talking about good people going the distance. And I've run exactly one marathon in my life with our oldest daughter, Caitlin, and she's a champion runner. I came in a fast 5+ hours, but the point is, I can relate this to running a marathon. Actually, exactly 10 years ago, because I was 47, and the feeling you have when you cross the finish line is such an accomplishment, no matter what your time was. I was all about the T-shirt and the medal, and also the post marathon eating and wine drinking. That's what I was all happy about that. I wore that T-shirt and that medal for 3 days to Champlain College just because I could. It was just I felt like I wanted to sleep in it, take a bath in it, everything. So here's my point: is that feeling of accomplishment and that fulfillment, that genuine, authentic fulfillment for people who are really doing their thing and using their signature strengths at their jobs, careers, callings, and they've got a friendship circle in there, and it's bigger than the paycheck. So now what's happening with them being sort of forced into a situation of a slow burn, quiet quit is again that diminished sense of agency, that diminished sense of autonomy that we as adults need as we need oxygen. Take that away, and it's a straight road to sad and depression, to sadness and depression. And or added part of that. Part of that is directly related to our sense of meaning and purpose, because without a sense of meaning and purpose, that is a straight road to sadness and depression, and it's all intertwined together because we need that, like we breathe O2. It's just how it is. And I'm also going to put out there that I think it's quite possible also that I think self-esteem is taking a toll, because when you take these good people who've been at this for a long time in the trenches, on the front lines, in various ways, dealing with other people in a pandemic where we're all vulnerable for whatever reasons, and feeling as if you can't do your job anymore or doing it as well because you've been weakened in a sense, because you just because it's we used to race to work and love it, at least most days. We all have a bad day here and there, and now you're dreading what you once loved. And what the heck happened here? And I was always different than that. How come this is different now? And how come I've lost my sense of control? And how come I've lost the sense of satisfaction I used to have? How come I feel like a walking flatliner? When I see my students, and my brain is telling me I love them, and I know in my heart I love them, but I'm starting to become numb. And fill in the blank with whatever that is with your students. It might be, your employees in different ways, whatever. And now they're feeling like they've done something wrong, or like I almost feel like a bad puppy or something, just crawling into a corner, and that's ridiculous. Good people in a situation where they've, put all this energy and effort in their lives with their life minutes, now feeling badly. It's absolutely awful, is what it is. It's awful. Okay, so I came up with two types of quiet quitters for my Psychology Today article. It's super general. And the first one I would refer to as the passive quiet quitter. These are the coasters. I mean, they're both coasting, but these are more evident coasters. They're generally fed up, and they're box checking simply to acquire the paycheck. Okay? This employee may not have any kind of plan to leave right now, but they're on autopilot. They're on autopilot and they're doing the bare minimum. So they are doing their job, because the quiet quitters are conscious of wanting that paycheck and not wanting to be fired, just to be blunt. So, somebody can't come back and say, well, you didn't do this, that, or this. They might be used to you doing this, that, and this, and you used to go above and beyond and stay after a half an hour and drop something or somebody off after work. You might have been on a committee that you no longer have any desire to be on anymore, right? And the passive quiet quitter is smiling and nodding. So you're not catching on to anything because they're not being cranky or anything. They're not, there's just not a lot of water cooler talk, right? And it's a slow gig with with the passive quiet quitters because they just have minimal engagement, minimal social interaction in the workplace. Okay, but they're still smiling at you, and everything's looking okay, looking like it's fine. But they're coasting. They're coasting just to get to payday, checking the boxes. Okay, the next one, or the only other one is the at least that I have, the active quiet quitter. Okay, so this person obviously is also coasting, but this person has a much more conscious awareness of what he or she or they are doing, right? So they are very clued in to that they are done at this current job, and they're also going through the motions just as a passive quiet quitter is, but the active quiet quitter is diligently planning their escape. They're not letting anybody know that, but they got feelers out there. They're talking to their connections. It's all hush, 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 hush. And they are acutely aware. They are acutely aware that they have outgrown their current work environment. And again, like it's with a tenacious, like a tenacity. They are watching for the green lights to point them in a new direction. So this is the crew that's typically very, very self-aware, very, very passion driven, and they're kind of not willing to let their flame get snuffled out. They're not willing to. They enjoy what they do. They want to be satisfied again. They want to have joy once again. They know what they're pretty aware of their signature strengths, and they are actively looking to use those someplace else. So they're watching, paying attention to the sign, like, green lights, I like to call them. Actually, my friend Tom, who he's my synchronicity friend. And once you're onto this, being in receptive mode, it's like a faucet you can't shut off, nor would you want to. But watching for the green lights, that's just you got a phone call out of the blue from this one who knows somebody who has an opening. They're paying attention to all that stuff. And they're doing so while safely collecting a paycheck as they search for something new. They too are smiling and nodding, telling a good joke once in a while. Minimal water cooler chat, and definitely not on the committees or doing any of that extra stuff unless they smell that somebody might catch on, and then they might stick around for a little while on a committee. But most of all, this crew is pretty much calling it done. And so some signs of quiet quitting might be employees taking their PTO, which is paid time off, and I know they call it different things in different companies and different, higher ed. I know is different from corporate America. It's faculty schedules different than, um, you know, doing different things, and it's just all called different things. So, paid time off, vacation time, sick time, leave, right? So, taking the time off, meaning, and I mean in little spurts, like in 1 or 2 days at a time, 1 or 2 days at a time. Now, this would only be true if the company, agency, or whatever it is, does not pay out for it when an employee eventually leaves. So if they've racked up 2, 3, 4 weeks vacation, but if they leave, that gets lost, right? Like, if it's a suck it up buttercup situation, they're definitely going to take every last minute of that, no question. Otherwise, the reverse would be true. So that's important to know either. If an employee, if the agency, actually the first agency right out of graduate, when I got my first master's degree, the agency I worked for down in DC did pay you your PTO, which I honestly didn't know that, and I was saving all of it to be with our firstborn son when he was born, and so I took the maternity leave, didn't realize that they paid out for it. And then my husband got transferred right after a few months after we had him. And I got a nice check because I didn't know they did that. So, surprise. Wasn't a lot of money because it was back then, and it was my first job out of graduate school. But still, a surprise is a surprise, and we were very, very grateful for it at that time. But if a job doesn't do that, there certainly isn't any sense in hanging on to it, right? So, but also watch out for the hoarding if you do pay out for it, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're saving it so they can drop the resign letter on your desk and then grab a check and run. And then another thing is very subtle disengagement, as we talked about, with workplace conversation. So they're smiling and nodding and answering you. They're all talking to you. We want to keep it all going on, but nothing extra. Not attending anything extra is the other one. Not volunteering for anything, even if it's fun. There might be, employee picnics, employee this, employee that, bowling nights, this, that. Nope, no, thank you. Okay. You also might see that they are taking breaks throughout the day more than usual. So they're, just taking little 15 minutes here and there. Why? Because they don't care anymore. They're done. Underneath that smile, they're done. The sixth one is leaving more often for a few hours during the day for quote unquote doctor or dentist appointments. Not saying they're lying, okay, but they might as well schedule all that stuff now before they have to start a new job, right? When Because they don't care if somebody says, "Hey, well, supervisor, well, you left for 3 hours yesterday. I realize that. I'm sorry, I had a counseling appointment. I was all right. I had a dentist. I got having some dental work done. I'm sorry about that. There's going to be a series of that little root canal, something, because you just don't care. Don't care. Um, the next one is the seventh one is they may start to show up late or leave early, and it might be just 10 minutes. And they know that probably a manager's not going to say much about that. Might even lead up to a half an hour. I had to go pick up my child. Da da da. Next day, same thing. Had to go pick. And normally, if you wanted to keep your job, you might save that for when it's an actual urgency. You wouldn't just kind of, be sort of laxed about it. But now you don't care, so why not? And then the eighth one is showing oh, sorry. Oh, there's nine. Never mind. Showing a diminished sense of interest. So you might have been super interested in maybe the company newsletter, or I know in I try to keep it not with just higher ed, 'cause I realize that is not everybody, obviously. And newsletters. And actually, I do a newsletter, and I'm super interested in that. And sometimes there's writing groups, or this group or that group. There's well-being groups, I think, across the country, and all whatever you're doing. There's tons of well-being stuff going on across the country. Walks during lunch, or this or that, or interesting things. Sometimes book clubs. I know our daughter's in a book club that comes right out of. She teaches third grade, and they all do that. And then the ninth one is not asking many questions in general. So even if they're work related, because let's say you've got a strategic plan, or whatever the words for that are with your different fields. There's whatever leads into the future, whatever that might look like. Mission statement, or just talks, just conversations. What would this time next year, where would we like to be with sales and quotas, and what would we like to? I have both sons are in sales. I know their world looks dramatically different than mine does. So, where might we want to be with sales of this or sales of that, and kind of setting the bar. And that the quiet quitter is going to sit in that meeting and smile and nod, and maybe not ask many questions, if any. Why? Because they're not going to be here next year. That would be the reason. At least they hope it's that way. And obviously, it's an employee's market right now, so they probably won't be. And so, for any leaders who might be listening, you might be saying, "Help! Now I can look out for these. Now what do I do?" And honestly, my first big answer would be to say, be really, really nice to them. Really nice to them. And it kind of goes back to that kindergarten, the golden rule, right? To treat other people as if you'd want to be treated, how you'd want to be treated. And I'm a big heart to heart person. And I do realize that can be hard for leaders, especially with that example I gave earlier with a manager herself. That was a real story. She's a really good person, trying not to burden those under her, and just not having enough people. And what do you do, So, and if that's what's going on for you, just be honest. God, we're all burnt out. Let's brainstorm and figure out what to do. I think leaders often have this, sort of mindset that they've got to be like the parent of the group. You can be a leader and be human at the same time. It's not like any, like if you let your guard down, somebody's going to take advantage of you, at least not with responsible grown-ups anyway. And be honest, this is a situation that we're in post-pandemic, and let's brainstorm. And also I would say, well, we're going to get to that. We'll see if there's anything else left over. So the most effective way to prevent employees from becoming energetically detached, and those are actually, I was going to say those were my words, but I think actually I got that from Aaron Doughty, is another influencer. Energetically detached, because remember, they're doing it with smiles on, otherwise you can't smell it that much, is to stay on top of what's happening at the workplace and in the environment, and constantly try to improve it. And I would say in small ways, really small ways. Be human, really, is what we're talking about. So this is a huge one. And I actually got this from a colleague of mine. If she's listening, she will know it's her. We were just having a conversation about this in general. It was actually right before I wrote this article. And we weren't talking about the quiet quitting, actually, per se. We were just talking about leading to it, I guess. We were talking just about the post-Rona vibes going on. So related, I suppose. But she was saying how really what we need leadership to do in general, across the country and probably world, is to listen to understand first. A lot of times, leaders, because leaders want to fix things, right? And that's good. We need leaders to fix things, but I don't think that should be first. And obviously, there's situations where it should be first. Example, building's on fire, run out the door. And also some things that are also, obviously imminent. However, in most things that involve, the usual meetings that have, whatever field you're in, I'm sure most people have meetings once a week, once a month, or bi-weekly, whatever. These chats we're having about sales numbers or, retention rates or whatever, is listen first just to understand. There isn't a human being on this planet who doesn't have a need to be heard and validated. That's just true. No matter what the demographics are. It doesn't matter what the skin color is, how much money you come from, how much money you make now, whether you grew up in an urban environment or a rural environment, or we all need to be heard and understood and validated, because this is what makes us human. We want to be on the grid. I mean, that's just it. So emotional validation, what I'm saying, is central to the human experience. So when the work conversations are solely about numbers and reaching quotas, whether that's retention rates, whether that's sales quotas, or any other details related to workplace performance, the real people getting it all done often feel invisible. Those wizards behind the curtain just kind of fade out. And so that's why it's important to tune in and just really listen. Put the phone away, not upside down on the desk, because that is not any more polite than leaving it face up on the desk. All that says is whoever might text or call, this is why it's sitting here, could possibly be more important than what you're saying, so I'm just going to leave it there. It's absolutely obnoxious. Put the phone away and to my contact and be attentive. And also mix up the dry meetings with some more genuine conversation to create balance. Right? How are we doing in the sales department? How are we doing on the police force? How are we doing? How is the emergency personnel doing? How are the faculty doing? How are the staff doing? Whatever. How are we doing those people working at Kohl's department store? Pull them all together. How is it going? The second one is, when in doubt, ask. We tend to think we're great mind readers. Well, not really. Okay? So get feedback from your employees in a way that feels safe, such as an anonymous survey. So here's the thing with anonymous surveys. Truthfully, if you really want to be anonymous, and people may not like this, the best way to do it is the old school, ballot box, handwritten. I realize obviously online is faster, right? Though there's research on that, and not everybody trusts that, and there's a good reason, because anything on the internet can be traced. Even if it says it's anonymous, probably is anonymous. But in the back of many people's heads, they know if somebody wanted to find out their responses, they could. And that's just the facts. So that can lead to false positives. And here's the other little tidbit, is that some people who write the negatives on those internet-based surveys might be your quiet quitters, because they don't care if you know it's them. So basically, I'm saying that those anonymous surveys can just be a pony show. That's what I'm saying. Okay, individual one-on-ones are ideal when you create an environment that truly feels safe for personal disclosure. I mean, really sit down and just, I'm saying be human. That's the main theme of this whole talk right here. You just can't go wrong. When in doubt, have a heart-to-heart and just be vulnerable, Cultivate emotional safety. So leaders are essential in creating an emotionally safe environment in the workplace. In a very broad sense, there are two ways to lead, right? Either with fear or with respect. Both will work. We know that, right? Thankfully, I've had a really good experience with leaders. I have to say, I mean, I'm so grateful for my professional life, all the way from getting out of graduate school. Just landed at good agencies, good everywhere. You know how much I love Champlain. And I had at one place I worked that was not in higher ed, actually. I don't want to be too specific here, just in case, well, actually, I don't care if they listen. I guess then they got an education, right? There was a little fear-based management going on, and it was very uncomfortable. And I hadn't experienced it before because, I had such good vibes all the time, and it was just awful. It was subtle. It wasn't like and he was clubbing us with a stick. It was just fear-based motivation. And that only goes so far. It'll work in the moment, but not forever. So both will work. One leads to much higher levels of happiness, job satisfaction, creativity, and longevity. So that we know that when we lead with respect, it's a win-win for everybody, and it's cheaper because you're not training people over and over again because you're going through them like Kleenex. So when we treat people, with agency and autonomy and, you just respect that leader, you want to go out of your way for them. And my very best example of this is actually my husband. And though I'm biased, I happen to know it's true because I've hung around long enough to hear what people say about him. And because he knows people and he takes them as individuals. He stays after when he needs to because something's going on in their life. He does a lot of rewarding with different things like appreciation, little things, constantly. And he's also flexible, and they respect him because of it. And he also knows how to draw a line in the sand. So, respect goes all the way, and they absolutely adore him where he is because he has so much respect for the pack. That's what we're talking about here. Number 4 is be aware that workplace politics are often the silent killer. This is the truth. Workplace politics are everywhere. We know that they're everywhere. Why? Because we're throwing human beings together. They're complicated and different, right? They're all different. People have agendas, people, whatever. So it's important for those in leadership positions to be aware of the dynamics and power differentials going on. It's important to realize that employees may not feel free to speak honestly if they are fearful of the political undercurrent. And I've just talked to so many friends who have left different places. Friends who are don't even work with me or whatever. But when they talk about it afterwards, it's just so common that they left because they just couldn't take the political undercurrent anymore. And you can't say it, even if there's an open door for it. You can't always say it because if there's that fear, you're going to shoot yourself in both feet. I know as a professor, I'm really aware of the power differential, even though I would never use it. Never, ever, ever use it. But here's the thing is, they don't know that. They're 18 years old or 19 years old. I have a couple seniors, but mostly I have the first years, 18 or 19 years old. So I'm so careful with every word and with, different requests if you want to stop by my office. I'm just so careful about, giving them agency for choosing meeting times and different things. And careful with just, conversation in general because they're in a place where they might feel that there's a power differential. And it's important to be very mindful of that. Make employee mental health a priority. For real, though, if employees are encouraged to call in well on occasion, right, to practice self-care, but the undercurrent is giving the message that doing so will affect their stature at work, this is obviously going to backfire. We know that. So just keep it real. I have to say, Champlain's really good where I work, and I don't mind saying positive shout-outs here. They're really, really good about saying if you're not feeling well, and well doesn't mean not feeling well doesn't necessarily mean you have the flu or the Rona. They mean well in general. If you're not feeling well, if you're feeling, fried, stay home. Just make your arrangements so you're not leaving anybody else. Just take care of your stuff and take a day and be remote or be just home and stay off your computer. And they do encourage that. I have to say that's a nice trickle down with the leadership at Champlain. And I would like to hope that that's that way everywhere. I know sometimes in corporate America, and granted I can't speak for the entire United States, obviously. I do know from my small, narrow little experiences with people in the corporate world over the years that they would say that, oh wow, I get 2 weeks vacation and a week of personal days. And they'll say, oh yes, so you think, oh, in reality you have 3 weeks, you could call in well and go skiing and just let them think you're sick or whatever. But then if you call in, even if you call in sick, let's say you're actually sick but you're not dying, and then if you do so and the timing isn't right, you might blow a promotion. Well, that's not keeping it real. If you're sick, you're sick, right? And then the next one is leadership is not one size fits all. As they say, we are all snowflakes. We're unique and different, so we can't manage people as if they're all the same either, because that isn't going to work on the receiving end. No two of us are alike. And so managerial interaction should therefore be sensitive to age, right? We don't manage someone who's fresh out of high school or college the same way as we would manage somebody in their 40s or 50s. Obviously, but it's not obvious to everybody. I would hope it would be obvious, but it isn't. Developmentally, it's not even. They're not on the same track. One's concerned about making their way in the world, and the other's concerned about, retirement, maybe saving and taking care of aging parents and young adult children. Maybe they're having babies. It's all different. Then there's the 30s, and they are having babies, maybe if they choose. It's just such a different thing, and in career-wise, they're in a different spot. So it's really important to take age into consideration, cognitive wiring, the neurodivergent crew. It's very, very important to understand what makes them tick. Personality styles are all different. Learning styles are all different. Personal life circumstances are all different. And any other unique differences that may be present. Being a leader is a gigantic responsibility, obviously. And leaders, big L or small L, really have the potential to make a gigantic difference in someone's life. Gigantic difference with how they manage. They've got the power to really get it done. And 7, lunch. There's one very small way to show appreciation to employees is to feed them. Arrange for a lunch once a month that has no agenda whatsoever. No stats update. No how many sales we had, no policy information, nothing about work. Just stave off the urge. Just don't do it. I remember the first agency I worked for in Washington, D.C., was talking about that earlier, which was, man, they had it down with this. And I've never forgotten it. I was 23 years old when I got out of graduate school. And then engaged, married, blah, blah, blah. So that would have me about 25. I've never forgotten it. We were put into teams when we started, and each team would take a turn to select the caterer for the monthly luncheon. And that's also when we got our paychecks. We got paid once a month, which is a bit of a drag when you're newlyweds. And actually, my husband and I both got paid on the same day. So it was like feast or food. We started out eating steaks day 1, and by day 29, we were on our 5th day of pasta. But anyway, it wasn't really the point of that. But so we got to eat. So each team on payday, when we did the luncheon, we would do Chinese, and then we'd do Italian, and then maybe Indian food or Nepal food, whatever. And we tried to not overlap. So it was, oh my gosh, it was so good. And I don't know if they ever declared the rule. It's been so long now, but they might have. But we didn't talk about that stuff. We were all together in the room. We all stayed I think it was an hour and a half they gave us, to right in the dead center of the workday, but it was once a month. And basically we hung out, broke bread together, and talked. It was rejuvenating, it was enjoyable, and something we all looked forward to. And then the last one, and actually, honestly, I'm stealing this one from my husband, is give your employees the birthday off. Take your birthday off. This is a small gesture. And look at it this way. It's one day a year. Who cares? Who really cares? And it makes that person feel special, even if they have no plans. They may have no plans. They can sit in their apartment or house on the beach, in the grass, in the park. Who cares? Knowing that somebody values them. This very small gesture goes very, very far. So I would strongly suggest to give your employees their birthday off. And if this lands on a weekend, which eventually it will, if they stay long enough, which they will, right? If this all settles, then give them the Friday or Monday, and make this a mandatory practice. Like, even if you have those type A'ers, that want to say, "Oh, I understand, but I really want to be here." No, don't allow them in the door. Mandatory practice. And that same agency was run by 2 power women. They were amazing. They also gave us the day off after we had to be on call for the weekend. It was an agency for the homeless. Actually, it was very good. But when we were on call as social workers, psychologists, and everything, it was a mandatory take the Monday off. You wouldn't dare show up there, because one of those 2 women was really strong personality. I mean it in a good way. You would not dare show your face there that Monday. She'd send you packing, because it was about the agency. You take care of yourself, and then you're also better for here. So make it mandatory. And that's basically it. That is my shtick on quiet quitting. I didn't really plan it to be for this long, but this is a pretty big deal going on, at least in the States right now. And I'm going to guess other places as well. So that's it. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a wonderful, mindful day.